Everyone, welcome to the third episode of this 5-part driving series. So far we've looked at strike across the toe and the heel, but now we're looking at the strike when we hit it too high on the face and too low on the face. So what that does to the ball and why we may actually achieve strikes like this. So the first things first that we're going to see here, and if you can see from the video, is that when we strike it higher on the face, you'll see how now what wants to happen is it wants to get the ball to spin downward. Okay, it's going to get it always going to, what we saw in the last episode as well, was that the ball always wants to spin towards the center of the face. Same thing happens. So when we strike out the top, what's going to happen is generally it's probably going to kick the face up a little bit higher. So it's going to hit here, it's going to send the top of the club back, so it's going to launch higher. Obviously sometimes if we catch it too high and it's right on top, that's going to be what we call like a sky, it just goes straight up. So if it catches too high here, what's going to happen is it's going to do this, and it's going to want to roll the ball more this way. Now that's not saying that a ball is going to spin this way, it's always going to have backspin, but it will just have less of it. So you might start to see a ball do a bit more like this in the sky rather than staying in the air. Now when we catch it too low on the face, same thing happens. Now this is going to send the bottom of the driver backwards, and then that's going to send it more this way. So what it's actually going to do is add spin to it. So what we're going to do now is have a little look at why these can happen, and then I want to finish up with a little myth about playing in the wind that some people have perceptions on, and really try and squash that myth and hopefully help you out next time you're in that situation. The first thing we want to look at when we are trying to strike it out of the desired spot on the face is how high we are teeing the ball. Now obviously we can get all different gradients of tee height, but there's a good generally kind of rule of thumb that we're going to start off by, and that is to try and get about half of the ball above the top level of the driver. So you're going to find a tee which can get you into that sort of position. Some people will like to tee it a little bit lower, some a little bit higher. It'll also depend on your swing shape. However, that's a good rule of thumb to generally start by, because that will allow you just enough to brush the tee just out of the floor, but still to kind of try and get that desired hit. But it'll also allow you to get a bit of an upward hit at the ball, which is going to move us on to our next point, which is our angle attack. So if the ball is too far back in the stance, what it's going to encourage is a driver potentially to come down too steeply. Now if it comes down too steeply, it's going to be potentially in this position, and what you'll see now is the top of the driver is being taken to the ball, instead of where we saw ideally we want to try and get it come in roughly quite neutral. If it comes in with the hands ahead, like we might want to try and do with an iron, that's taking the top of the driver down towards the ball, and this can then ultimately get under the ball and then it will pop up into the sky. So the ball is too far forwards in our stance, so it is outside of our front foot. This can also have an adverse effect in terms of hitting too low on the face, because if the ball is too far this way, generally what can happen is the club will come down, the low point will happen in the desired place, kind of around here, start to work upwards, and this is where you would then generally want to strike the ball, working upwards. Because the ball is not present, the driver continues to work upwards, and it could catch the top of the ball here. Now, obviously the greater the distance away from the middle of the face, the worse it's going to be. Obviously that was an example of catching it right on the top, but the same thing would happen if it's just low on the face here. What we'll typically see in this situation is the ball actually send off really low, because as we saw, hitting low on the face is going to throw the bottom of the driver downward, which delofts it, and it's going to send lower. However, the driver, because it's designed, is going to try and get it up into the air. So using the same spray as we saw in video 2 that we can put across the club face and then hit some shots, you'll see whereabouts you want to strike it. Out of anywhere, it's actually quite desirable to hit just above centre. Reason for that is going to launch a little higher, but as we can see from the video as well, it's going to be spinning more, it's going to be wanting to take some spin off. It's like a rainbow flight we're trying to look for. We're not trying to look for it to stall up into the air. This moves on to a final point, how we can play into the wind. Lots of people, when playing into the wind, they'll try and tee the ball lower and try and drill it into the wind. But the only thing is with that, as we tee it lower, it's going to hit lower in the face. And as we can see from the videos, when we hit lower in the face, it's actually going to increase backspin. What's going to happen when the ball spins more into the wind is going to stall, and it's just going to collide into that wind. What we ultimately want to do, and this is where the meaning tee it higher, let it fly comes in, is you tee the ball higher. Ultimately, if you hit it a bit higher on the face into that wind, it's probably going to take some spin off of it, probably got a better chance of cutting through the wind. So a little tip is when you're playing into the wind, try and still keep the ball teed high, as long as we don't strike it right up top. If we can strike it here, you're going to get the most benefit out of the shot. Give that a go. Really try and practice where that ball position is. Have a look back at video 1 if you need a recap on that. But stay safe. And in episode 4 is going to be introducing how to create a little bit more power. See you there.